All right, let's talk Coen Brothers. So, I recently finished the Coen Brothers filmography. Obviously, there are plenty of Coen Brothers movies that we have all watched a million times, but there's those stragglers, those ones that maybe you don't haven't seen. Some lady killers in there, even some good ones like The Man Who Wasn't There. I hadn't seen, so I just kind of said, let's just finish the filmography. And since I did, I figured why not make a tier list on all of these films. I also created just a ranking list on my Letterboxd. Follow me on Letterboxd if you want to see that. Jackson Kruger is how you do that. But yeah, let's get into the Coen Brothers. We're going to go in chronological order. So we're starting off with Blood Simple. I guess I should explain the tiers first real quick. On the obituary, those are the top ones when they pass away. These will be the ones that people mention in the box set. If you buy the box set of like Coen Brothers Essentials, they should be in there. Then Still Good, Meh, and One to Forget. Those you can figure out on your own. Blood Simple. I mean, this is just like, from the word go, the Coen Brothers had. And I think we're going to get a lot of films in these top few tiers. Blood Simple right away is an in-the-box set type of movie. I just think that it's such a simple premise, but the way it delivers on it is so good. And the way they have a kind of like a misunderstanding, which the Coens love their misunderstandings, and it's difficult to pull that kind of thing off, especially when it's your first movie. And the fact that they completely nail it better than most films do is really just a testament to, their talent right away. You can just see that, again, a lot of times when you go through filmmakers' filmographies, their first couple, it's like, yeah, they're figuring it out. They arrived fully having this figured out, and you're thinking, okay, well, are these guys going to be kind of like suspense noir type guys? And then their next movie is Raising Arizona, this almost Looney Tunes-like comedic film with Nick Cage as the star. It's doing a bunch of creative things with the camera, moving it around in a herky-jerky way, and it also completely hits. Now, I don't know if Raising Arizona's, again, I'm trying to figure out where I'm going to draw the line between Still Good and in the box set. I think I'm going to keep this into Still Good just because for most filmmakers, this is an in-the-box set movie. There's so many good Coens movies that I'm going to have to be a little bit, strategic in which ones I decide to put there. But yeah, ultimately, I mean, Raising Arizona's, again, a fantastic watch. There's so much humor in it. A movie I really enjoy. Next up, we have Miller's Crossing. So famously, Miller's Crossing and Barton Fink kind of tie into each other because the Coens at one point had writer's block in the middle of writing Miller's Crossing. They don't write, with an idea in mind. They write as they go. And for Miller's Crossing, they kind of just got stuck and didn't know where to go. So they decided to shelve it, and they worked on something else, and that something else was Barton Fink. So they got talked about it as the most successful writer's block of all time. But ultimately, they got back and finished Miller's Crossing. Miller's Crossing, it's a movie I need to rewatch, quite frankly, because I've watched it only once, and I think everyone who loves this movie says, it takes the first time just to kind of figure out what's going on, and the second time is when you can actually enjoy it. And that's kind of where I was at. So I'm going to keep it in Still Good for now, because I do think there is some, for one thing, I just love the music. I mean, I find myself humming the, like, do, that stuff all the time. I think it's so good. But yeah, it's a little bit too convoluted of a plot. And again, the Coens love their convoluted plots. We'll get into some of those later on in some movies that I absolutely love. But I think this one's a bit more plot dependent than some of those other ones are. Again, I am nitpicking because it's the Coens. They are very good, and they follow this up with one of their strongest movies they have made. Barton Fink. It's the thing where I'm like, am I going to just put like 7 movies on the obituary thing? Because Barton Fink is so good. It is their, kind of one of the more abstract movies. And the Coens have done abstract before, or later, I should say. They will do more abstract stuff. This probably is them at their most David Lynch, I guess you could say, if you haven't seen this one. It, of course, won the Palme d'Or, the biggest award you can win at the Cannes Film Festival. It is, I think, a fantastic film through and through. Nope, didn't mean to put it in the mat here. Let's put it on the obituary here. I think it is just just fantastic all the way down. The performances are fantastic. The kind of almost hell-like situation of the hotel and how there's clearly other guests that are supposed to be there, but you never see any other guests other than John Goodman there. And John Turturro, who is also awesome in Miller's Crossing, is just fantastic in this film as well. It is about writer's block, but very much about a lot more than that, including like it takes place during World War II, and I think there's tie-ins to that. It's a fantastic one. The Hudsucker Proxy is next on the list. It's kind of funny to go from Barton Fink to Hudsucker Proxy. It goes to show where the Coens are, because Hudsucker Proxy is really kind of them almost at their silliest. It's similar to how to go from Blood Simple to Raising Arizona. And the Hudsucker Proxy was kind of one of the last ones I had watched. I believe it was Lady Killers was the last one. It was second to last one I had watched, and it's almost like a forgotten Coen's movie. It doesn't get talked about a lot. I think it's a bad name. The name describes what's happening, but I just think like the Hudsucker Proxy, they should have named it something different than Hudsucker, right? If they're going to call it the Hudsucker Proxy. It's a bad name, but it's a really fun movie. It's kind of just a great comedy through and through that just works, I think. So yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna put it in the top 2 tiers, but like, it's a film that is completely effective on every level, in my opinion. So that one is fantastic. And again, the Coens, kind of the way they do things, going from then they're, really a studio comedy. And like, it's funny because this is in some ways their blank check, so to speak. I bring that up because part of why I wanted to finish the Coens is there's a podcast called Blank Check that I listen to sometimes that they did the Coens recently, got me in the mood to rewatch all the Coens. But anyway, this is kind of their biggest blank check, and you think, okay, so are they going to be like crazy? Like, is this going to be their Babylon or their Beau is Afraid? And they're like, no, let's just make a studio comedy. Let's make one that we want people to like and enjoy, which I think is fun. Fargo is next on the list. Of course, Fargo, one of the kind of all-time movies in general, and I rewatched this one not too long ago, and I'm just like, this is just kind of a perfect movie, right? That gets said a lot, but it's like, what point in this movie is there something like, does that need to be in there? Frances McDormand is obviously one of her this is still her most well-known role, and she's had a lot of well-known roles over her career, but this is still the one I think you think about when you think about her great performances. And William H. Macy and that character of William H. Macy, and the guy who, like, he's pulling off this scheme and putting his wife in danger almost solely because he just like doesn't want to admit to his wife's dad that like he's a failure. I just think is such a fantastic character, and again, a convoluted plot, but this one you fully follow what's happening throughout. There is humor in it, even though there's not really like jokes in it, if that makes sense. I don't know. Fargo's fantastic. It's on the obituary. One of the best movies ever made. Of course, just one of the best Coen Brothers movies ever made. And The Big Lebowski, maybe this is a hot take, I'm also putting this on the obituary. I just think that this, to me, it's my favorite comedy ever. And again, it's one of those weird things where when I first watched The Big Lebowski, I think I was like 18, 19. And so you're watching all of the ones that you're supposed to watch, right? When you get into movies, it's like, okay, well, these are the movies I'm supposed to watch. I'll watch this one. And I don't think I got it the first time I watched it. I think maybe I was expecting for more like silly humor or so. I don't know. And I actually think the way to watch The Big Lebowski, if you never have, is to almost view it like it's a drama. Like view it from that perspective. And the jokes just kind of come when they come and are funny that way. I just think it's great. And I think the Walter character is obviously just as good as the dude in terms of how iconic they are. There's so many quotable lines from it. But I would also say, like, I do think that the ending of the movie, I guess I won't spoil it, but I'll just say Walter and the dude, when they hug sort of towards the end, like, I just think there is something emotionally, like, emotional to that. And I think that, like, it'd be so easy to write these characters off as doofuses. I really don't think that's what the Coens do in this movie. I think that they do a good job at, showing the humanity behind these people that kind of don't really have a way that makes sense for them to live in the world they live in. And so they just bowl and they kind of just exist. And I think that there's something, like, kind of beautiful in that, actually. So it's not just a comedy, in my opinion, although it is you watch it for the jokes. You watch it for how funny it is, and it is fantastic. Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? Another movie that I think just works. Again, I think for a lot of people, this would be their on the obituary. I think I'm going to keep it and still good, just because there is a lot of really good stuff we still have to talk about. But yeah, I mean, it's fantastic. It's kind of a riff on the Odyssey, although I believe the way they have spoken about it is basically they read the Odyssey in school and did not read it again for the movie. So like they kind of kept some stuff from there, but really it's a Coen's thing. The music is very fun in this one. Yeah, and what's not to like about A Brother, Where Art Thou? The Man Who Wasn't There, a movie that I watched recently and really, really enjoyed. I think Billy Bob Thornton is so good in this role where it's basically just camera's on his face for the whole movie, and then he voiceover narrates over it. I think like the title makes you think like, the man who wasn't there. Why is he the man who wasn't there in this one? Again, a bit of a convoluted plot, but one that you can follow. And I think the ultimate, it's not a fully satisfying ending. In some ways, that's what's perfect about it. I do think they do this kind of thing a little better in A Serious Man, even though those are different movies. But I do find it really, really good. And you know what? Let's put it up in the box set. I really like The Man Who Wasn't There. I think it's really fun. Intolerable Cruelty. Again, there are people who enjoy this movie. I enjoy when George Clooney's in it. He's not in all of it. There are the sections where he's not in it, and I'm pretty much always waiting for George Clooney. And really, the courtroom scenes, I think, are like 10 out of 10 fantastic. Another one where the plot gets creative in a way that I think works for the movie. It's not a bad movie. Again, for other people, maybe it would be in the still good tier, but for the Coens, this is a meh Coens movie. The Lady Killers I think this is going to be the only one where both the Coens are involved in that I am going to put in one to forget. It's interestingly enough the first time the Coens were credited together in a film. Previously, there's weird Directors Guild rules where they don't want just anyone to be able to get attached to get a director's credit. They want to be able to protect the directors that way is the logic. Feels like they kind of go a little too far sometimes when the Coens have to make like a dozen movies before they can finally get one that counts as them together. But ultimately, they finally get their name credited, and that's pretty much the only thing worth talking about in The Lady Killers. That's not true. There's plenty to talk about. I think the biggest issue with this movie is the characters are just so uninteresting. They're unlikable, but not in a good way. I get like the Man Who Wasn't There. I don't know if that character is likable, but he's interesting. He's fascinating, right? The Big Lebowski. Those aren't guys you'd want to be friends with usually. Maybe the dude, but they're not guys you want to be friends with. But they're so fascinating. Walter, you would hate to have a conversation with him in real life. You love to watch him talk in the movie, right? The Lady Killers are. Those are a lot of characters that you would hate to have a conversation with in real life and don't like watching in a movie, and that just makes for an uninteresting movie, even if the plot is fine and everything. It's also not their best plot, really. Almost maybe one of the more straightforward plots that they have. I think they kind of use the straightforwardness to subvert expectations sometimes, but again, to me, it's all about characters. They didn't really nail the characters. Tom Hanks has I guess thanks to Elvis, it's not Tom Hanks' weirdest accent anymore, but he does some weird stuff in this movie. So, one to watch if you're trying to finish the filmography. Other than that, not really worth it. And so the Coens were on a bit of a cold streak, it's fair to say. Again, for some people, that would not be the worst streak in the world for them. It is a bit of a cold streak. So to follow it up with No Country for Old Men is just fantastic, where it's kind of the one Cormac McCarthy adaptation that's worked. It's on the obituary, it has to be. Now, I will say, as someone who I've read a decent number of Cormac McCarthy books at this point. I think I've read like 4, so I'm not like I have another one on the shelf that's going to be one I read soon. But I'm not like I haven't read all of his stuff or anything like that. I would say that No Country for Old Men is not my favorite of his books, and not my favorite of his stories, and I don't think and because of that, there are other things that I think he has done more interestingly, but at the same time, it's probably a story that works best as an adaptation. It famously started off as a screenplay before he turned it into a book because no one was buying the screenplay. And then eventually the book got adapted. And I always wondered, like, did the Coens like look at that screenplay before just making the movie, or did they just say we're just going to focus on making the movie? Probably the second part. It is very accurate to the book. I mean, it's very similar. Obviously, the book I think gets you more in the head of the sheriff and kind of what he's thinking during all of this with his narration and stuff. But other than that, I mean, come on. The scene in the in the convenience store where it's flip a coin, why all that stuff. That's just so good. Anton Chigurh as a character is so fantastic, and of course played perfectly. Like Javier Bardem, you read this character and you're like, okay, there's no way you can make this like work on film, right? And Bardem somehow does. Like, unbelievable. It's just so good on every level, and obviously that's what gets talked about. But everything about its film is fantastic. So even though it's not necessarily, I think for me personally, even though I love the Coens and I love Cormac McCarthy, it's not one that I think like fully gets like a 10 out of 10 experience for me, I guess. But like, it's a perfect movie. It belongs on the obituary, I think. Burn After Reading, I think, is also a movie that is fully effective at what it's trying to do. I don't think it's trying to be No Country for Old Men. Famously, this is a movie that was, I keep saying famously. Some of these things aren't famous. This part isn't famous, but this is already a filmed and recorded movie before No Country for Old Men came out. So they already kind of had this one made. So it was their follow-up to No Country for Old Men after they win the Oscar and everything. But they didn't know that it would be, it would be coming off of potentially their greatest career success. Maybe they would have tried something differently if they did know that. But honestly, it's still a very fun movie. I'll put in the still good tier. I think that the characters, obviously fantastic with, a lot of just really big name characters. Brad Pitt is potentially at his best in a role like this, and how fun he is. And I kind of just like the ending and like the way that it's all building to something, but what exactly is it building towards, I think is very fun. So yeah, still good tier for Burn After Reading. A Serious Man is the next one, which I have to say is, I think, in many ways a one of their most powerful movies. It's funny because going back and watching this, the Coens, you don't really think of them as like religious filmmakers, right? It's not really a thing that I think they've touched on too much, but they do touch on religion actually a decent amount when you go back and watch the watch their stuff. And there's no better example than A Serious Man, which early on almost kind of compares religion to the Schrodinger's box question, and about how it's the idea is, if you have a cat that's in a box and there's something in the box that could kill the cat, and you close the box, then it's not what happens in the box that kills the cat, but it's when you open the box, that is when you either the cat is alive or dead. So when the cat in the killing machine is in the box itself, essentially the cat is both alive and dead at the same time, simultaneously both alive and dead, and they make that comparison with religion. And I just think there's something really fascinating about that, and these characters that are, searching for an answer. And even, there's a scene in the middle of this movie, I'm trying not to spoil anything too much, so I won't, but there's a scene in the middle of this movie where you have a rabbi who kind of tells this story of, there was a guy who was a dentist who saw there were like prints on the back of someone's teeth, and was driven crazy by why are there carvings of symbols on the back of this guy's teeth, and what does this all mean? What's the point of this all? And he wasn't able to really find happiness until he stopped questioning why it existed. And the rabbi tells that story to our protagonist in this movie, who's just like, yeah, but why were there markings on the teeth? Like, he can't like comprehend that. Because of this, I think a lot of people view this as in some ways a very unsatisfying ending. I think the ending is perfect because of that. I go into a little bit more detail about that on my Letterboxd review, but I don't want to spoil anything here, so I will not. But I am going to put this on the obituary. I think it's maybe their best film. That's how much I like A Serious Man. Again, it's very much my thing, where it is about kind of what it all represents and what the film represents. So I can get why it's not everyone's thing, but hey, it's my tier list. I'm going to put it in the top tier. And then True Grit, which just like rules as a movie, right? Was kind of a blockbuster for them, actually. It's in the box set. It's a movie that I like, a good Western, and this is certainly a good Western. Essentially, I've also seen the the original, and I've even had the idea of maybe it'd be a fun video to kind of compare them, because I think the Coens do a lot of interesting stuff to just make the world feel so much more real and so much more lifelike. Again, this is often called a remake, and it is. There was another movie called True Grit that existed that was the same plot, although they're both based off of a book, and essentially, well, it's not a book I have read. From what I understand, the original book was not that true to the original movie was not that true to the book, and so they said, let's just like make one more true to the book. We think that'll be a better and more interesting film. And I think part of it was they just didn't like the original that much. It's not a great movie. I think it's fine. I think it's fun as kind of an older Western. John Wayne's not great in it, and he won the Oscar for it, so I don't understand what happened there. Because I think John Wayne's been good in other stuff, obviously. But yeah, I mean, it's an interesting decision, and I'm glad they did, because it is just really cool. And the Jeff Bridges character is fantastic. Haley Steinfeld is amazing in this. She's very young in it. She rules in this movie. Like, she's so good in all of this. It's so fantastic, and kind of the character arc of Jeff Bridges is the movie, and it works so well on such a high level. Yeah, it's a fantastic one. Inside Llewyn Davis is next on the list. I think kind of what's considered their most recent really good movie. Some people would put it on the obituary. I've only seen it once, granted, so maybe that'll change if I see it another time. But I'm gonna put it in the box set. I think there is still just a lot of really good stuff here, and for Llewyn Davis, I do think that he is a very fascinating character, in the guy who wants to be successful, wants to be famous, but like, kind of doesn't too. Like, he's very much not willing to, I think he wants to be famous for doing the music that he wants to make. And I think that when you try to make art, you ultimately have to think of an audience to some degree. I can even make some comparisons with this movie channel, where I'm kind of just doing what I like to do, and the reality is, if I wanted this movie channel to be more successful, I would have to start putting out content that there's a wider audience of people that want to see. This isn't how I make my money. I make my money with my sports channel, so I can sort of afford to do that. For Llewyn Davis, he does not want to do other stuff. He's talented. To say he's untalented is unfair. He's incredibly talented, but he's kind of unwilling to change, and he definitely can just be kind of a dick at times, for lack of a better term. But that's part of what makes him such a fascinating character as well, and you almost can't help but to root for him, even though it feels like he can't get out of his own way. So yeah, I could totally see why some people really connect with this movie, and why it's some people's favorites. I mean, I think there are movies, even in the still good tier, that are movies, I can see that being like your top 10 movie of all time. Anyone in the box set or on the obituary, if that's like one of your top 5 movies, I'm like, I get that. That makes sense to me. That's just the Coens. They have 9 movies that I have in this top tier, these top 2 tiers, because of just how good they are, and currently only 2 movies in the bottom 2 tiers, although those tiers are going to get busier here. Hail Caesar is a movie that, again, there are people who really like it. I'm just not a big, what's great movies type of movies. Like, those just aren't really my thing, and like the classic Hollywood stuff, and it's cool. There are people who are into that. I am not really one of those people. I like movies because I like movies, not because I like classic Hollywood stuff. That's just, and again, I like classic Hollywood movies, but kind of the stories behind the stories don't do as much for me, which I think if that does, definitely check out Hail Caesar. You'll probably really like it. I don't think it's a bad movie. I don't think it's ineffective at what it's trying to do, but what it's trying to do just isn't that interesting to me. We then have The Ballad of Buster Scruggs, to this day, the most recent Coen Brothers movie that they made together, because we'll talk about The Split, where essentially this led to The Split. It's for one thing, I didn't realize that this was an anthology movie when I started watching it. I thought that it's The Ballad of Buster Scruggs. I assumed it'd be about Buster Scruggs the whole movie. No, he's only in about a small chunk of it, and then I have a bunch of other stories. And basically, I think the Coens have described it as they had to make 6 movies and they're Western movies that are all these really complex moving parts. You have to get a lot of sets and all that stuff. I forget whether it was Ethan or Joel who said it, but I think when they were asked why did you guys split up, the answer is always essentially we made one too many Westerns. It was just it was too much work. We needed a break. We needed to do smaller stuff. Yeah, there is some really good stuff here in the Ballad of Buster Scruggs. There's also some stuff I just don't enjoy that much in this movie, and sometimes even both. My favorite story in Ballad of Buster Scruggs is the wagon train one, which the ending kind of annoyed me, which is unfortunate because I really like that story up until that point. I'll just leave it at that if you haven't seen it. But there are some really, again, some powerful things in here, some really fascinating things in here. So it's almost like it needs, I think, a tier in between still good and meh. But, meh isn't necessarily bad. And again, from the Coen Brothers' perspective, it is meh. From a different filmmaker, it would be at least in a still good tier. So that's where I will have that. So now we are done with the Coen Brothers, and I figured let's throw on the individual, films that the Coens have made: The Tragedy of Macbeth, Drive Away Dolls, and Honey Don't. So first we have to go with Joel Coen, who made The Tragedy of Macbeth. And look, this is the definition of a movie that, in my opinion, is a perfectly made film that is just not for me. I'm not a Shakespeare guy, really. Again, maybe if I read more of his stuff, I would like it, just because the language is always, I get a bit tripped up during that and don't fully get what everyone's saying. I haven't dove into this stuff, so that's just me. The visuals are awesome. Denzel is insanely good at acting, and I think this is it's not his best performance, but it's maybe his most impressive performance in how, every other character, they're reading Shakespeare, and they're reading Shakespeare, right? It is very, thou art, over the top. Denzel says these words as though he is just a character who is saying those things. And I don't know how he manages to pull it off so well. He's so good. I almost think it almost clashes with everyone else in a similar way to Marlon Brando and On the Waterfront. It's so good it almost makes the movie worse sometimes because the other characters are not as naturalistic as he is in that one. But yeah, Tragedy of Macbeth. I'm gonna put it in the still good tier. I think it is a good movie. I'm gonna take it's not one that I'm gonna ever watch again. I get it, but if it is your kind of thing, you will enjoy it. And it's almost on the nose how the Coens break up. And so much of what we talked about in this video is how they blend serious and comedy so well together, right? And so it's kind of funny that one of them makes the most serious thing you can think of, the Tragedy of Macbeth, and they tell it in a more dour way than you usually would, and then the other one makes lesbian comedies. That's the thing that if you make a TV show and you have two characters that are great at blending comedy and more serious stuff, then you have them break up at the end of a season. Well, at the start of the next season, it's one character, one is doing lesbian comedies and the other is doing Tragedy of Macbeth, right? It's on the nose almost how interesting that divide is. It should be mentioned though, this is in part films are not made by one person. The Tragedy of Macbeth, Frances McDormand, who is married to Joel Coen, I think she has always wanted to do this type of role. She's had this idea in her mind. Ethan Coen is also married to, it's a very untraditional situation. I believe he's married to a woman who identifies as a lesbian, and then they have, I guess, some sort of open marriage thing going on top of that. It's a very untraditional marriage. Hey, you guys do you guys. I'm not gonna comment on that. Hey, let people live their lives. But so because of that, she is the co-writer on these films as well. I think it's the same thing as earlier, where they both just direct these movies together. But because Ethan has now been stuck with being the brothers. Now you can't divide that again, so now it's just directed by Ethan Coen. I don't know, things are weird. But Trisha Cook, that is the person who we wrote these movies with. And they're weird movies, to be honest. I don't think that they're fully great. We'll start off with Driveway Dolls. That was the first one, and it's so not a Coen Brothers movie. Again, it's a lesbian road trip movie, where I think weirdly a lot of the humor in these tends to be like, aren't lesbians funny, which is almost something you expect from someone who has like no experience with a lesbian woman. So it's weird that like this is like, written by a lesbian as one of the people who wrote this, and by a guy who's married to a lesbian. Again, confusing. But Driveway Dolls is going to be in the one to forget territory. It's just, again, it's trying to do its own thing, and I think because of that is actually less interesting than Honey Don't, because Honey Don't is, it feels like it's not shocking that a Coen brother made this movie. Like it feels very Coen Brothers in how it is, how the story unfolds and how things work, and it just doesn't work. Like there's so many little things in this movie that I'm like, I can see how like the same brain that wrote, or at least one of the same brains that wrote The Big Lebowski, came up with something in this. Like there's similar like little details that like you get like, oh, I can see why that would be funny, and it just doesn't work. I think the film as a whole, the ending is not great. Just all of it, like the Charlie Day character is weird in this one. Like none of this works. And so I actually think if you're going to watch one of the one to forget movies, which this is the tier I'm going to put it in, I actually think there is some value in this one. I guess in the Lady Killers too, you can kind of say that Driveway Dolls is whatever. You watch that if you're a completionist. That's really the only reason to watch it. I think that for Honey Don't and the Lady Killers, there is some interesting thing in like, hey, why did this fail? A lot of people will just look at, well, if Ethan Coen put two into one to forget category, Joel Coen and his one crack at it, made a pretty interesting movie that is in the still good tier. Is Joel Coen just the guy? See the one, the engine? And I just don't think that's how movies are made. I think we often view movies like they're books, like it's a one person's singular vision. But a lot of people make a lot of decisions to make a movie work. And especially when there are two writers and two directors, they're both going to coincide. And I almost just coincide, no pun intended. I just think that for like, it probably just helps to have someone to bounce these ideas off of and strengthen them. And and when you have one of the all-time filmmakers that you can bounce things off of, it works better than when you have, Trisha Cook, who is still figuring this stuff out. She is still working on this. So I don't want to blame her for it, because it's both her and Ethan Coen. Just saying, like, not having Joel Coen in the room, I think hurts. And to be honest, I think probably not having Ethan Coen in the room might have hurt the Tragedy Macbeth. Maybe there was some better stuff there that could have made it work more for me, potentially. I don't know. But I think ultimately, these are two incredible filmmakers who work together to make incredible films. Even if separate, they make okay, if not just ones to forget. So part of what I find so fascinating about them. So this is my tier list. Again, 5 on the obituary. They made a lot of movies, but still, that is kind of feels like a lot. But I don't know which ones I would want to take down. I mean, I think Fargo, The Big Lebowski, and No Country for Old Men just have to be on there. I couldn't make everyone would hit the unsubscribe button if I tried to take one of those 3 down. You could talk Barton Fink and A Serious Man out of there, but I just love those movies so much, I wanted to put them in there. And even like the next 4, it's like, again, I guess you could argue Blood Simple or The Man Who Wasn't There down a tier if you wanted, but like, I don't know, those are really good. Like, there's so many good movies, and in fact, in these 6 into still good, you could probably talk yourself into any of those being in the top 10. I mean, it's just, it's so fantastic. So yeah, those are my thoughts on the Coens. Let me know yours in the comments below. I've had allergies and my eyes are acting up, so I gotta end this video. But thank you to everyone for watching. I always love making the movie channel stuff. So let me know your thoughts in the comments below about it. Always love hearing from you. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.